And we are live. Hello and welcome back to the Freelanceverse. Thanks for joining me. Let me just quickly turn on the light here so you can see me a bit better. Hope you're all doing well. Thanks for joining. It's time for a live Q&A on the channel. As you know, I do these every 2 months in a live stream format, and every other 2 months it's a pre-recorded video. Someone is already here. Alhan Rahimi, hello, thank you very much. Where are you watching from? Please, if you hear me well, let me know in the chat and let me know where you're watching from. I always like to hear that. And of course, if you have questions that you would like to ask me, just go ahead and I will answer them live. If no questions come in, I also have questions prepared from my comments that I'm not just sitting here not doing anything. So I will just structure this in a normal Q&A format. So we'll have my questions, answer them, and whenever something in the chat comes up, I will refer to that. People will trickle in, of course. It always takes a few minutes until people arrive. But whenever you're arriving, let me know in the chat. And until then, I will answer some questions. So let me pull something up here. I have a few questions saved. If it will open, yes. So the first one comes from Terabyte396. Idea where I could get practice in localization in 2025. Logjam seems to have been inactive since last year, from Thailand, by the way. Hello, thank you very much for the question. I checked when you said this because this was a question on the localization specialized episode, and there we talked about Logjam. And you are indeed right that they were inactive since November 24. I'm not exactly sure why, if they still do events. I can reach out to them if you want. I anyways wanted to contact the organizer, and I can let you know an update. In terms of practice, you don't need necessarily Logjam organized events to practice, right? You can practice localization at any time, anywhere. If you're into video game localization, you can think about when you're playing a game. You can think about oh, Chris is here. Hello, thank you for joining. You can always, while you're playing, think about the localization approach, right? The Logjam is cool because it's a structured event where everyone can participate and talk about, similar approaches. And that's always fun. That's also something we did at university, for example, when you have a text and you all work on the same text, you get 10 different approaches, and then you can actually go through it, sentence by sentence and talk about the approach. That's not at all realistic. That's not at all what happens in real life, but it's a very nice practice that is doable in a university setting, and it makes you think. It makes you think why I chose this approach. Why is this something that comes to mind as a first option? Because often we have a lot of biases when we translate, right? Maybe certain sentences come up over and over again, and maybe you have kind of, even unconsciously in your mind, you have a set structure for a certain sentence, and you just, when you read it, it comes up and you use it. And that can be sometimes tricky because it's not always the same register or the same audience you write for. So it makes sense to even question your most standard sentences sometimes. I just had an example today, actually. It was simply something like, hope this video was interesting to you, looking forward to meeting you next time, bye bye. Just a very friendly English greeting sentence at the end of a video, or at the end of a tutorial. And we decided in the end that this was not needed at all for German, because in this context, for the people writing, what you just needed was freundliche Grüße, like best regards, right? You don't need all the let's say fake. Sometimes it can be fake in English, right? The niceties, let's say, that sometimes you just don't need in German. And but these are decisions that you make based on experiences and based on the register you're writing for. But I will reach out to Logjam. When I saw this question, this triggered something in me, because I wanted to reach out to them for a video, and now I've seen that there were no events in 2025, which is a shame. So I will definitely check it out. A very similar question now that I'm thinking of. Panda Bear 4512 wrote, I'm going to reach out to my network and see about starting a translation bootcamp. Do you have any tips? And also, I need to start reading more in my target language. So actually a very similar question, like a translation bootcamp. so that can mean two things in my immediate reaction, right? That can mean that you go somewhere together and you're just co-working. You're actually just doing your translations in the same spot that is organized, for example, in the UK by some of my good colleagues. They do I think it's called Translators in the Lake District, something like a business retreat. I'm not exactly sure, but if you type these words in LinkedIn, you will find it. So they get together, they co-work, but then they also have workshops where they actually try to develop new skills and learn from each other. Or if you mean a translation bootcamp, as in getting together and work on one text and then discussing, that's exactly what I mentioned before in the university context. That's also very useful. That's then more for really CPD, right? For professional development. So then you can actually learn from your peers, from others. And reading in your target, that is definitely essential. It's good to read in your source as well, of course, because you need the best is to flip back and forth between all your sources and your target, but your target needs to be on point. And I need to also force myself sometimes, or not force, but remind myself sometimes, because my immediate instinct when I want to read a new book is to read it in English, which is a shame, because even if it's a translated book, I'm very curious about how the translation is made, right? So often people don't want to read translated books because they prefer to read the original. I'm actually also interested in the meta question of the translation. Like, one of my favorite books, called Hours for Algernon, is a very specific book that is heavily relies on the writing, on the actual words, right? So not the story is also nice, but the whole story gets put together with the way that the author writes. And when I read this first, I read it twice in English, and both times my mind was blown. And then I really want to give this to my sister for Christmas, but I would give it in German. And then I realized the translation for this book must be so difficult, because it's not only the story, it's the whole writing. Because it's hard to explain, but essentially throughout the book, the main character develops his speech patterns very significantly. So you have to start writing in a very different way than you write in the middle of the book, and then you go back to the beginning. So I got it in German, and I read it twice in German just to think about the translation. So these things are amazing. But that's I left the question long ago, so let's move on. Let me know if you have any questions in the chat, as always. Otherwise, I will just continue with my prepared questions. Properties for real estate 63663 asks, thank you for your information. My teenage daughter is an aspiring author and translator, and I'm truly looking for a cost-effective laptop for her. What do you think is the best brand? Good question. It's not necessarily the brand that I would worry about too much. These brands are all relatively same level, unless you really go for a low-end version. But what is I made a whole video about that. What is important for me in a laptop? One thing that is overlooked often, and that I really appreciate, is to have a number block on the right side, because when you're writing, often you use numbers, and I can't be bothered with using the numbers on top. So I have my writing block on my number block on the right side, always there, and I can type numbers very quickly with that. For me, it's important to have enough storage, so I would definitely go for at least 512 gigabyte storage. And the RAM, so the processor, the working processor, I would go for maybe an 8 gigabyte or a 16, depending on how many different tasks you want to run at the same time. For me, I have 16 gigabyte RAM and 1 terabyte storage, and my computer is, I think it's very fast, but still sometimes when I open Trados, it can't deal with it. It's just such a big tool that's causing a lot of problems. But anyways, and one thing for me that's important is it's the weight and the battery life, because I prefer to work from anywhere at any time, whenever I can. I sometimes go to the forest in the summer when it gets too hot in the apartment, and I need to be able to work at least 3-4 hours on my battery, and I don't want to, carry a big, like, Lenovo 17-inch beast around. Of course, they would last for like 8 hours on battery, but to find a nice balance between battery life and weight. Currently, I have a Samsung Galaxy Book, and I'm very happy with it. I can also flip the screen fully over, so it becomes a tablet. So sometimes I like to draw, I like to do creative things with it, or watch a movie in the cinema mode. And for that, the flexible screen is very useful, and the touch screen. Yeah, that's all. I wouldn't go for a too small screen because you're writing a lot, so it's not good for your eyes if you go for a 13-inch. I would say I have a 15-inch, but then at my desk I have 2 additional screens. So when I'm at my desk, I have a big setup. Otherwise, when I'm out, I have a 15-inch screen. Paul NY Ambio 929. Sorry. Where do I find clients who will pay, having in mind our real value? Great question. Now, I can't tell you where you will find them because that is very hard to know. And if I knew that, then probably I could sell it in a big, expensive course. The thing is, I can tell you who will pay for your real value, and that's exactly the company where the value matters also for them, right? If your value matters for their value, that's when they pay for you. So you need to think about which client doesn't even question how much you charge them, because what they pay you, they will make back anyways with their output, right? So if you help them with their localization, they will make way more money in that new target audience than they actually pay you. And then the real value is not even a question, because then you can charge whatever you are worth, and it will be worth it for them as well. Now, of course, that's very abstract, that's very hard to find, but that's the idea, right? If that would also be the case for you. If you imagine yourself paying for a service that doesn't give you any value, or not enough value to justify the purchase, then you wouldn't do it, right? If someone asks for I don't know, 25 euro for a plate of spaghetti, you would think like, this might fill me up, but it's way too expensive. I'm not going to buy that. But that's exactly the same thing with the localization, right? If they provide a service or a product to their end customers, and they can then expand to Switzerland, for example, in my case, and they make way more money with that, it's worth to invest in my services as well. In terms of where to find them, how I mostly find my clients nowadays is either through LinkedIn or through personal connections in the industry. I became very much really niche down in 2024. That was my big, was it? No, 2024. So now was my second year that I really niched down in the sports industry. I try to almost exclusively work in that area. I probably do like 15-20% max other things, but I try to sorry, I just saw a comment from Chris commenting, hard to imagine high-paying clients who don't also require specialization, real specialization. Exactly. That's exactly what I was just getting at. Like when you become the expert in the field, that so much that the clients then refer their peers within the same industry back to you, that's when you can actually charge a real value, because then you established yourself as the person, like the guy who does sports translations for a Swiss audience, and that's when you naturally come up in conversation, and that's when it actually can snowball from there. And that happened now a few times, which I'm really grateful for. And I also have great colleagues that work in the same industry as me, doing the same job, and luckily, even with the same language pairs, and luckily we don't have this competition, but we uplift each other and we share jobs. When someone is not available or not or fully booked, then it's the same thing, I guess. Then we always refer to each other. I have 2 colleagues that we constantly refer each other back and forth, and that's really powerful, rather than being having a very competitive mindset, which would probably, I don't know if it would be better for anyone. I don't think so, because with that mindset that we have now, we can actually share jobs and everyone can profit from it. Plus, we don't have to say no to our clients, because someone is always available of these 3 people that collaborate. Not even, we just share customers, let's say. So that's really powerful. So definitely, Paul, find your specialization. learn as much as you can, if not everything about it. Become the expert, write in it as much as you can. It's the number one thing you can do to find high-paying clients, and then network. That's key. I got a very big comment just yesterday that I wanted to read to you, because I found it interesting. It comes from Janet Thomas, and it's about subtitling. And I recently had a conversation with my father-in-law, and he was really upset by subtitles that apparently in Netflix you can't really choose if you want subtitles that are for deaf people or for just general audience. So they would have the tags that are also made for, like music playing, the door is closing, etc. And he asked me, can I turn this off? And I said, no, I didn't even notice that that's a thing on Netflix, but apparently it is. I didn't never really focused on it. And then Janet wrote a very similar question just last week. What I would like to know is why some subtitles for films, etc., include things that have nothing to do with the film and would totally be confusing for a deaf person relying on subtitles. For example, door slams, car horn beeps, people shouting, dogs barking, when these are just background noises and nothing to do with the actual film. If I were deaf and the door slamming was mentioned, I would expect to see something related to that. Also, statements about music, which again is just background and adds nothing to the deaf person's understanding. Another thing is how often a name is spelled in several different ways. Well, that's a whole different, that should not happen. It's as if they are not even paying attention. Red B are the worst. Are there no qualifications or checks on subtitles? I'm not a deaf person myself, but often use subtitles if my son is on shifts and sleeping, just so I don't disturb him. And I find it so frustrating, so I imagine the deaf would too. That was a question that I got, and then I can't answer for the deaf, so I thought, why not talk to the one deaf person I know, right? So I reached out to her, and I just wanted to know, does it actually... Do you actually need these audio descriptions? Does it bother sometimes? Is it enough? Is it not enough, etc.? And basically, we had a quick conversation on LinkedIn about it. And she said sound descriptions are very meaningful if they actually provide something to the reader. Definitely, they want clear indicators of who is speaking, who is the author. And if the tone is switching, for example, if something is said very sarcastically or whispering or excited or funny or scared, then they like to have a marker that this sentence is said in that way. The name thing, she said, is just not a question. It has to be consistent, it has to be correct. Preferably, whenever someone new starts speaking, the name is indicated. The music should only be mentioned if it's relevant to the emotion. So if it's, for example, fearful or excited or slow or romantic, if it sets the scene in a way, then the music should be tagged. But definitely no unnecessary clutter. So I found that very interesting, and apparently a lot of deaf people actually dislike too many things on the screen, like something in the background, like a dog barking. It's just mostly not relevant unless the dog is about to attack the main protagonist. Then it's of course relevant. And then sometimes apparently the subtitles even spoil the movie, like so. That the background noise is actually too much information for the hard of hearing. So a very good question. It kind of led me into a rabbit hole yesterday when I was on my lunch break. So I just wanted to share this little information. And now I go back from my LinkedIn to my YouTube. So I see you guys again, or at least the chat. So if you have any questions, let me know. These were all the questions I've prepared. We are at 20 minutes. I would have 10 more minutes if anyone would like to know something. Other than that, I can maybe give a quick update about what's been happening in my professional life. We are heading towards the end of the year. I'm going to work until the 20th of December, I think. Yeah, so I will have 2 more weeks only. Wow, okay. I thought it's 3 weeks, but only 2 more weeks until the end of the year. As always, I will make like a yearly roundup on the last Monday before Christmas, so the 22nd. Next week, the 15th of December, I will do a day in the life video once more that I'm currently recording. And then on the 22nd is the yearly roundup where I show my numbers, how the year has gone. It has been a very special year with a lot of professional breaks and less working hours. So the actual numbers will be nowhere near my usual revenue, but of course I will adjust it to as if I worked full time, to give you an idea what happened. I think the year has been relatively stable considering the fact that I haven't worked as much as I usually do. Of course, I took 2 months off, April, or even more, 2.5 months off between April and June. So I was curious what would happen if my clients would disappear. But luckily, again, with the same people that I mentioned before, I had a nice system that if an email came into my inbox, immediately I suggested to reach out to these 2 people. And I did lose some clients, not necessarily to them. I talked to them. It's not the case. But, if someone writes a translator and they say, I'm not available for 2 months, it might be that they look for someone else. And then it's hard to get them back again. I did reach out to all of my clients, and most of them, if not all of them, replied, said that jobs will be coming in again. But still, some of them haven't, which is perfectly fine. I did find new clients in the meantime. So it was definitely a good experiment because I had never taken off work more than like 3 weeks in the past, I don't know, 15 years that I'm now in the professional life, or a bit more, almost like 18 years. So it was a nice change, but also a bit nerve-wracking, of course, because it's not that I'm just paid during these months. I was paid for 1 month from my Social Security, and the other month I just took off. So that's what's been happening. Especially November has been very busy. Early December has been a bit calmer, which is nice because I've been traveling as well. And now the last 2 weeks of the year will be full of exciting projects that are lined up. Always in December, everyone is still trying to squeeze in some translations. So I'm excited. I was just onboarded on a new client that starts, what is today? Yeah, today. Okay, I haven't heard anything yet, but today the project starts. So over the next 2 weeks, I will be working with a new client, which is very fun. And actually, it reminds me, I need to send still an email tonight. But I don't see any more questions. Thanks for everyone that was in the chat. We had 12 people here overall. Very kind. Thank you very much for joining. And yeah, I see you next Monday with a day in the life video. And then the last video of the year is always the yearly roundup. Take care. Let me know in the comments also if you have other questions for the next Q&A. And then I see you next Monday with the next one. Bye-bye.